Hi, my name is Phil Cameron. I am the chef at the German Embassy, and today we're going to make a Christmas meal my way. Alright, the first thing you're going to want to do is rough chop your onions. So I'm just slicing kind of in 6. My celery, just cutting up like that. I have my leeks over here. Again, just really a rough chop. Everything here is going to get blended at the end of the soup, so don't stress too much the cutting of it all. I'm going to come over here and peel my apple. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pot, put my butter in, and I'm going to start sweating all these ingredients. The apple, we're going to chop it up again, rough chop, just like that. So now that we've got all that, we're going to go to the other side, to my kitchen set, and we're going to sweat all this off. Alright, so we're going to turn our burner on to medium-high. And what we're going to do is we're going to let the pan warm up and we're going to throw the butter in. We're going to let the butter slowly melt, and once it's melted, we'll throw in all our ingredients, including the garlic that I did not chop up, and we will let all that sweat. What I mean by when I say sweating is that I want my onions, my garlic, my shallots, or sorry, not my shallots, but my leeks and my celery to become translucent. So I don't want any coloration on it. I don't want that rich sweetness that we get when we caramelize something. I just want to extract as much water as we can. So this is a special soup to me because when I was younger, we ate a lot of cream soups, squash soups, celeriac soups, and of course the traditional French onion soups closer to Christmas. But this is one that really stuck with me through the years. I really worked the recipe, and I wanted to share it with you. So now the butter is nice and melted. We're going to throw in all these wonderful ingredients here. I have my whole garlic, and again, I didn't chop it up because at the end, once everything is cooked down, we're gonna have to put into a blender, and the blender will take care of making it nice and smooth. So I'm just going to let it sweat for a few minutes. I'm going to stir it around once in a while, and once most of this is nice and translucent, I will add the apples. For now, we're going to go back to the other side of the kitchen and we're going to continue the preparation. Alright, now we'll take our celeriac, which is also known as a celery root. I've already taken the skin off to save a bit of time, and we're just going to again rough chop it. It doesn't have to be very exact. It's just going to go into the soup and get blended, so there's no stress. Just something like this is good. Sometimes you'll fall onto something like this. That is fine because there's no brown, but it is normal in the celery root to find this, so don't be surprised if you cut it open and you find a cavity like that. You just want to cut it out if it has brown or black pieces. There's nothing wrong with it. So there you go. Now that we have the celeriac, we have our nice piece of thyme that we'll also use whole, and we're going to take it out just at the end before blending it. And we have our cream and our chicken broth here. Now, if you don't like chicken broth, you can substitute it with vegetable stock. You can substitute it with a beef stock. Mind you, if you use a beef stock, it will change the color. So just keep that in mind when you decide to use a broth. So there you go. So you see a bit of coloration. We want to try to avoid that, but you're starting to see the sweating of these beautiful ingredients, and we're almost at the point that we'd want to stop cooking them. So I'm going to throw in the apples just like that, and throw in the celeriac, and essentially all we're doing now is just making sure to try to get as much of the water out so we can keep the flavor in, and when we take the water out, it really enhances that flavor profile. So I'll give that another about 2 minutes, and again, just keep stirring it. If you have a bit of coloration, it's not the end of the world, but you don't want to have too much, because that will really change the taste and the color of the soup. So right now in the pot we have 20 grams of butter, 75 grams of leeks, 50 grams of onion, 25 grams of celery, 5 grams of garlic, and 200 grams of celeriac. Now, if you take a look, you can see that the onion has changed colors, the leeks have changed colors. That's what I mean by sweating. So what we'll do now is we're going to add our chicken broth. We're going to add our thyme. And we're going to add our maple syrup. Now, why I use maple syrup? Of course, I have the French in me. So a lot of my recipes, I substitute the sugar with maple syrup. But also, the celeriac has a bit of a bitter taste. So the maple syrup is going to help balance out that bitterness. It's going to add just a bit of sweetness, not too much, but just enough to counterbalance that bitterness that we find in the celeriac. So now that we have all our ingredients in, we don't want it to be boiling that hard. We're going to turn it down to a medium-low heat, and we just want a nice simmer. And we just want some evaporation. The stock, the juices are going to incorporate into all these vegetables, and soon we'll have a nice consistency. I'll show you that after. Alright, so now that our soup is going, that is something that takes some time. We're going to jump in to the croutons. So we're going to cut, again, very rough chop. Don't stress the cutting too much right now. I'll tell you when you do have to focus. But we just want small little pieces like this. Bit like that. This is the size we're looking for the croutons. Next we'll take our garlic, and this time we're going to mince our garlic. So very small chop, and just be careful with the blade. I use a very sharp knife because I find my tools are the most important thing I have at my availability. If I don't have a sharp knife, I can't do the job. It's just like someone building a house. If they don't have the right hammer, they won't build a nice house. So once again, I want a very small chop. Let's pause for a second. Now that we have our garlic, we're going to come over here and just pull off the thyme, and we're going to chop that finely once again. Alright, so there you go. Now we have the preparation ready. We're gonna go back over to the stovetop and we're gonna... Alright, so now we're gonna crisp up the croutons. So we're gonna turn the pan on at a medium heat. Once again, throw the butter in and just let the butter melt. So I have about 20 grams of butter that is now melted in my pan. And I'm gonna go ahead and push in the garlic and cook it just a bit. Just a bit. I don't want to cook it too much, but I want to make sure that I get these nice aromas, these nice oils out of the garlic. So as you can see, it cooks pretty fast. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in the croutons, and they're going to slowly start browning. Now, for me, this is a very important recipe. You can do it in the oven, you can do it in a pan, but you can use this for a Caesar salad, you can use this for soups, you can use this for other garnishes. It's a very flexible recipe, and you just want that butter to soak into these croutons. Now, once you have that done, you want to just let them be and let them roast a bit. We won't put the thyme in right now just because the thyme might burn, so we're just going to let it be. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in a pinch of pepper and a pinch of salt. So you can kind of smell the bread starting to toast, as you can see right here. And that's the browning we're looking for. Some people prefer it in the oven. It is a more of an even cook, but I like it in the pan. It gives nice results. So there you go. We're going to leave it in the pan. The heat will continue to heat them. Now we're going to move right into the caramelized walnuts. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw the maple syrup into a different pan. And we're also going to throw the walnuts right into that pan. And we're going to want to mix it up. So right now the maple syrup's still at the bottom of the pan, but what's going to happen as time progresses is that maple syrup will soak into the walnuts and will slowly become more syrupy and eventually become a solid sugar that will coat the exterior of your walnuts. So already you can see a lot of the maple syrup is already on our walnuts. These are two very simple recipes to enhance any dish you want. Acts really well as a garnish or simply as a snack or on a cheese board. It's a delicious recipe. And I'm going to also throw a bit of salt on top of them. Always season everything you do. And now you can see that nice maple syrup is gone. The oils are coming out. You can smell the walnuts. It smells like Christmas. Walnuts do burn fast, so you want to keep kind of moving them around. And the maple syrup does burn fast too. So if I look here, we have a nice coating on the walnuts. Be careful, it is very hot. Sugar can burn you very easily. And we're just going to take that off the stove. Now that the croutons have crisped up, you can hear it like that. We're just going to throw in the thyme and just toss it. to make sure that the croutons soak in a bit of that oil, just like that. So there you go, now your croutons are officially done. Alright, so next, this is optional, you don't need to do this, but this is just a small garnish that I do. So I have a bit of water in this cup, and I have about 20 grams of sour cream here. I'm going to add a bit of water to thin out the sour cream. Give it a nice mixture. And we just want it a bit thinner than that, so I'm going to keep adding a bit of water until I have the desired consistency. And like I said, this is just going to be to garnish the soup, so there you go, you have a nice thin mixture. Pinch of salt. There you go. I'll show you how to plate everything at the end. So now our soup has been on the stove for about 25-30 minutes. I'm going to take the thyme out. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the elements. And we're going to come and scoop all this goodness into my blender. And you'll reach a point where there's juice at the bottom, so we're just going to come over here, come and scrape everything out. We don't want to waste anything. That's very important to a chef. There you go. Now we're going to throw in the cream. We're going to come back over here with our blender, put the lid on, and make sure that you start the blender off at low, because you don't want it splashing up and then you have bits stuck up there. It's a mess. So here we go. And gradually just bring the mix, bring it up, and just keep turning it up. So, if we zoom into this, yeah, this nice, thick and rich soup. But one thing we didn't do, and here's where I tell everyone, I don't season my soup until I'm ready to serve it, or just before serving it, because if I make this the day before, and I do recommend to make it the day before, so you have more time to focus on other things. I don't season it because I'm going to put it back into a pot. It'll keep reducing, and when you lose the water, the saltiness will be a bit more present. So I do not put the salt until I'm ready to, just about ready to serve it. Right now, though, we can serve it very soon. So I'm going to put a bit of pepper. And I don't measure salt and pepper because I feel like it's a taste thing. So I'm going to put a bit of salt. I'm going to turn my blender back on. Or if you have it in a pot and you're warming it back up the next day, then you can do it in that pot. But for this example, I'm just going to show you this way. And I'm going to try it. Very important to try it, and then adjust the seasoning once again. So, very good. Beautiful taste. I just think it needs a bit more salt. And then I'm going to mix it one more time, and it'll be ready to serve. I'm going to put it back into a pot and just put a lid on it and make sure that it stays warm. There you have it. Alright, the next recipe that we're going to work on is the peppermint mousse. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take our chocolate and we're going to chop it nice and rough. Just like that. Turn it around again, just so we have a nice grainy mixture. So we're going to turn around and we're going to go to the stove. I'm just going to push the chocolate back into my container. And now we're back to the stove. We're going to turn it on to medium. And as you can see, I have a bit of water. So what this is called a double boiler. And the water will evaporate onto the bottom of the bowl and will heat up the chocolate. Now, why we do this is because chocolate's worst enemy is water. The minute water incorporates with chocolate, it changes colors, the taste changes. So we want to try to keep the water out. So I'm just going to put the chocolate in here, and I'm just going to spread it out, and I'm going to let it melt. Once in a while, you're going to want to mix it with a spatula, but for now, we're just going to let it. All right, so we're going to have our cream. If you have a stand mixer, you can use the stand mixer. Go ahead and put the cream into the stand mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can use a hand mixer. You can use just a nice simple whisk. I'm lazy, so I try to find the fastest way to get to the objective. So I'm going to use the stand mixer. So here we go. I'm going to turn it on at the highest speed. And we're going to let it mix and fluff up. While that is whipping, I'm going to use my spoon and just break the candy cane. Once the whipping cream is almost completely whipped, we're going to take our peppermint extract and we're just going to throw that in so it can whip up with the mixture. Alright, so now back to the chocolate. You can see it start to melt. And we're just going to come and give it a nice stir. There's still chunks, so we're going to keep stirring it until there's no more chunks in your chocolate. Make sure to scrape the sides, and you'll see soon you'll have a nice, smooth consistency. There you go. Turn off the heat. Alright, so now we have this nice whipped cream over here. We're gonna come into our chocolate and we're gonna just mix the chocolate to kind of get it to a lower temperature. Right now if we poured it right into the cream would kind of lose its fluffiness. And that's what we want to avoid. So I'm just gonna whip it around a bit. And then I'm gonna take half the chocolate, pour it in. And we don't want to mix, we want to fold. So folding means that I'm gonna come and just exactly as it says, fold it. Just like that. You can see how the mixture is starting to shape up. I'm going to come and get the rest of the chocolate into the mixture. Just like that. So many recipes actually use eggs in a mousse. I'm showing you the easier recipe. This is something that you can wow your guests with very minimal effort. So if you want to recreate this during the holiday season and have fun with your kids, or simply have a nice dessert ready to go, this is something you can do the day before and just throw it in the fridge. And there you go. So now you have a nice and even consistency. It still has its fluffiness. It still holds. It's beautiful. Alright, so now we switch back to my prepping area. We have our mousse. And what I like doing, and this is a tip that I have for you, is when you're piping something, I use a cylinder cup and I just put my piping bag like that so that I have an easier chance to scrape the bowl and get all that nice mousse into my piping bag. So, just a tip, you can do it by hand, that's fine, but it just avoids the air pockets later on when you're piping it. So, there you go. When I use a piping bag, I have a star tip right there, and I just twist like that until I see that the mixture is at the end. So I have this really nice cup here, and what I'm going to do, this is for 2 portions, so keep in mind, I'm just going to come and do something like that, and the candy cane that we have is just to add a bit of texture, and there you have it. A nice and simple dish that will wow your guests. Not complicated, not very time consuming. This is one of the first recipes that I learned in school. It's actually one of the exams I had, and I'll never forget this recipe. It's always in my head, and it's dear to me, so please enjoy. Alright, so now we're going to work on the main. So what we're making for a main, one of the elements is a stuffing. So we're going to take our bread, and you notice that I've already melted some butter. I've whipped up half an egg, and just like the croutons, I'm just going to come and rough chop my piece of bread, just like that. So from there, I'm just going to put the egg into the butter. And actually, we're going to take a bit of butter and just grease the inside of your bowl. That will help us later on. And we're going to put that aside, kind of mix the butter and the egg like that. Now, we're going to make a brunoise of vegetables. So I'm just going to cut a nice even surface for the carrot so it doesn't wobble. And I'll show you how to make a brunoise. It's a very small chop. So we're going to make bâtonnet, which is all French terms, but they are used in restaurants across the world. So there you have a small brunoise. We're going to do that with the entirety of the vegetables. And if you can't get it this small, don't stress it. This is just, you know, a perfectionist side of a chef. It kind of looks good as a preparation, and also the carrots will cook a bit more even if you get the chops correctly. But I said, this is for fun. If you're doing it with your kids, just have fun. There's no stress. This is not a competition. You don't have to rush. I recommend to do the stuffing ahead of time, so the day before, and then all you can do is warm it up the next day. And the stuffing is really good cold too. Now we'll do the onion. Now it's a very small piece of onion. I'm just going to cut the middle like that, and cut very small little pieces, and once again chop it up into my Brunoise. And if you have any pieces like this that are left, you can just rough chop them into a smaller cut, just like that. So I have my onion, I have my carrots, and now I have my celery. The celery, such a small amount. Again, don't stress too much the size. This will not be considered a Brunoise, but the chop is still small enough. So here we go. I'm just gonna rough chop it just to get it kind of to the same size as everything else. There you go. So now you have your onion, you have your carrots, and you have your celery. I'm gonna come and chop my garlic. I really personally like garlic a lot. Some of you might not, so feel free to cut the amount in half. I just like the taste of garlic. It's probably from the French side of my family. And I'm just gonna come and mince the garlic. Again, being careful when I take the garlic off the blade. It's so weird to be cutting a small quantity. I'm so used to cutting large quantities when I'm working at work or volunteering or what it might be. I'm peeling and chopping industrial amounts of garlic and onions and carrots. It has helped me increase my speed. So don't feel the need to go as fast as me. Now I have my parsley, my flat leaf parsley, and I'm gonna hold it like this, and we're gonna cut it like a chiffonade almost. And if you're scared of holding it too close, you can also just chop it like freelancing it like this. But essentially you want a fine chop of your flat leaf parsley. And again, come and take that parsley off, and there you go, you have your parsley done now. Finally, you have your thyme, and as I showed before, we're just gonna come and get thyme off the stem, just like that. And we're gonna chop it like we did the parsley. Stuffing is a very important thing to me personally, because when I was younger, it'd always be in the stuffed turkey at Thanksgiving or the turkey at Christmas time. We would actually cook it inside the turkey, so it would get some of those turkey juices and it would soak it all up. It was very good. This is just a different way of doing it. So now that we have all that chopped up, we're going to take our mixture and we're just going to throw everything in. Just like that. You can get it off your hands, off the sides, mix it up. And then lastly, we'll throw the bread in. And what the bread will do is soak in all that butter and egg and just become very savory because of all the different ingredients that we're now incorporating into the recipe. And of course, we can't forget our salt and our pepper. So a bit of pepper, not too much, and a bit of salt. Once again, mix it up. And we're gonna go back to that mold that we had earlier, that we buttered a bit. And the butter is so that the parchment paper sticks down and stays down. So I'm going to push it down just like that, so you have your mold. And then I'm going to come and empty the mixture and kind of push it down, not too much, but you want the stuffing to take the shape of your mold. There you go. All right, now that we have our stuffing, we're gonna throw it into the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's gonna cook for about 15 to 20 minutes. And then once you take it out, you can either put it aside, let it cool off, and reheat it the next day, or simply leave it aside. It is good at room temperature, it is good at lukewarm temperature, so don't stress the stuffing too much. All right, now that we've gotten the prep from yesterday done, we're gonna jump into the main dishes today, and we're really gonna dive into it. This is the fresher and the main course that I'm gonna be presenting. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna peel our potatoes. If you peel the potatoes the day before, it's an option. Just make sure that however you store them in the fridge, but submerge them in water, because potatoes oxidize very fast and will turn brown, gray, reddish. It's a very strange color, and once that happens, the taste changes a bit and the visual aspect changes a bit. So again, I have a pot full of water here. I use cold water. The reason why I use cold water is because when you're cooking the potato, if you have it in hot water, like blanching a vegetable, blanching gets the outside to be cooked very fast and the inside's a bit crunchy still. Well, we don't want to do that with a potato. So what we do is we have room temperature or cold water, and slowly we bring it up so that the potato can gradually gain temperature and cook evenly. So that's a bit of the science behind cooking a potato. Just about done here. And what we're gonna do next is we're gonna cut the potatoes in quarters, because again, if we put the potatoes in full, it'll just take too long to cook, and we don't want that. So I'm gonna take my chef knife, cut it, and we're just gonna get nice half potatoes and then quarter them. And I'm gonna get these out, do the same thing. Once more. And then again, like I said, we're gonna throw all the potatoes in the cold water that I have, and we're gonna put it over medium heat. And we're gonna put it to medium-high heat, and we're gonna let that cook for about 20-25 minutes until I can poke a knife or a fork through the flesh. So now that our potatoes are on the stove, they're starting to cook, we're gonna make the cranberry sauce, very important. We're gonna take our garlic, and we're just gonna have a nice dice or a nice mince going. I like to use a lot of garlic, a lot of ginger. Some people don't like the taste of ginger. If you're one of those people, cut the amount by half. It will still taste fantastic, but I just like the intense flavor. You'll see it'll go very well with the duck, but if you eat it on its own, it'll be very tart, it'll be very sour, and don't be alarmed by that. It's just the way it's supposed to be. The fat kind of evens out and balances out the dish. You'll see that later once you eat everything together. And don't worry about how fine you get the ginger, because once again we're blending this, and we're going to pass it through a strainer, so don't worry about it too much. So now I have all my ingredients ready. We're going to go over to the stove and we're going to get that cooking. Orange juice. If you have fresh oranges, you can use fresh oranges. If you have orange juice, you can simply use the orange juice. We're going to throw in our ginger, our cranberries, and finally our sugar. Mix it all up. I like to throw a pinch of salt in there. And again, we're just going to let it cook down. And once some of the orange juice and the juices is evaporated, you're going to see the cranberries are going to start to pop, are going to start to split. That's when we're going to take it out and blend it. But for now, let's keep going on the rest of our mise en place. Alright, now the stuffing is ready. It's been between 15 and 20 minutes. It just depends how thick you have it. So right here, you push down and it's nice and springy. I'm just going to let that to the side. If you want to keep it in a warm place on your stovetop, that's fine. We're going to cut it up later. Alright, so now that we have our cranberry sauce on the go, we have our potatoes starting to cook. Now we're going to make the mise en place for the duck and the Brussels sprouts. And when I say mise en place is a French term meaning prep. So your prep work, your preparation. Prep work is very important in the kitchen. If you have your prep work done correctly, then it's very easy to finish everything in the end. So either use a paring knife or your chef's knife. We're just going to come over here, take the outside layer of these Brussels sprouts and cut them in half like this. So I have about 10 Brussels sprouts, I would say, and we want to put the Brussels sprouts facing down when we're frying them, because they'll get this beautiful color. The inside will start cooking, and then we'll flip them just at the end just to get a bit of coloration on the outside. But essentially that's what we're doing. And there's many kids that don't love Brussels sprouts. I was the opposite as a kid. I loved Brussels sprouts. I practically begged my parents to have Brussels sprouts. I didn't find out how to cook Brussels sprouts my favorite way until much later in my life, because my parents just did boiled Brussels sprouts. But it's such a versatile ingredient. You can replace, let's say, romaine lettuce with Brussels sprouts and make a Brussels sprout Caesar salad, or you can fry them. I've seen chefs use tahini sauce and fry them and then lather them in tahini sauce, or simply just roast them in the oven with a bit of olive oil and salt and pepper. It just comes out just so exquisite. Again, one of my favorite ingredients in the kitchen. So there you have it. I've cut up all the Brussels sprouts, so we'll put that on the side. And now we're going to work on the duck. So I'm going to change boards because I'm going to be cutting meat. So I'm just going to switch over this board right here. And I got this duck, and it's from a wonderful company called King Cole Duck. And essentially, there's this little piece here. We're just going to want to take it off. It's not bad. I usually just cook it on its own and have a little snack before the duck is ready. And I'm just going to clean up the duck a bit. The skin that you see here is called silver skin. It's a tougher skin, and when you cook it, it becomes very chewy. So we just want to come and clean that off. Take your time. Don't rush. And it's essentially just so it's easier to eat later on. So that's the silver skin part. And now we have too much fat, and fat is good, but too much can be a hassle. So what I do is I just run my knife along, and I kind of just cut around. And I'm doing this fast because I've had a lot of practice. But when you're at home, take your time. Now you can see a beautiful, just small layer of fat. And I keep the fat, I render the fat to use it later on. You could cook your Brussels sprouts, for example, with them. And I'm going to come and score my beautiful King Cole duck breast. So just nice and lightly run your knife across the fat, there you go, you've just scored your duck breast. Alright, so now, as you can see, my juices have almost caramelized, have become a syrup consistency. I'm going to go ahead and pour it into my small blender this time, because the quantity is so small I can't use the big blender. And I mean, you don't need to put it through the blender, this is optional. I do recommend, because of the consistency, you'll see later it's like a spread. So we're just gonna get that top on, and we're just gonna let it blitz. Alright, so now that I've blitzed my cranberry, just wash out when you open it up. I have this very thick mixture, and cranberries have seeds in them, so I'm just going to make sure that on my plating I don't have any seeds. The texture will be very smooth, so I'm going to put it through my sieve or my fine mesh strainer, whatever you have. And again, this is optional. You don't need to do this. Don't feel like you do. If you want the cranberries to be whole, you can serve them whole like that as well. And I'm just gonna slowly push my cranberry through it. And I'll make sure to just clean my spatula and come and scrape the nice coulis that we have, or puree that we have, into the bowl, so we're not wasting anything. We have a very, very thick consistency. That's exactly what we're looking for. We're gonna put a cover on that, and we're gonna leave it for plating a bit later. Alright, so now our potatoes are almost done. I have my cream, the butter, the goat cheese, and the confit garlic. I'm going to want to warm these up, so I'm going to use a spatula, pour it into my small pan, and I'm going to turn it to about a medium heat. Now, one thing about cream, milk, once it gets very hot, it might boil over, so just keep an eye out on it. Stir it once in a while with your spatula, and just make sure that it just gets all melted up in your pan. So now I'm going to take my potatoes, I'm going to use a strainer, I'm just going to strain it in my kitchen sink, and I'm going to keep the same pot. I'm going to put it over here, turn off the stove top, and I'm just going to shake the potatoes a bit. Make sure that the potatoes are nice and strained. And I'm going to come over here, and on top of the same pot, I'm going to push the potatoes through the strainer. Now, if you have a ricer, use the ricer. Some people use a stand mixer or a hand mixer. This is the way I'm going to show you guys, because I want to make sure that you guys understand that you can do this simple. So again, I'm just going to push all the potatoes through the small holes of the strainer. This is not the smoothest way of doing it, but again, I want to make sure that you at home realize that this is possible for everyone making nice creamy potatoes. I personally used Yukon Golds for this recipe. But russet potatoes work as well. I find the Yukon Golds have a sweeter flavor, and the russets have a bit more starch. So I'm just using the Yukon Golds, but go ahead and use your favorite potatoes. There you go. So they're all passed through the strainer. I'm just going to nicely, gently scrape the excess that is still hanging on to that into the pot. Now our cream, butter, and goat cheese has had the chance to melt, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pour that nice creamy mixture into the potatoes. Don't forget to turn off the stovetop, and essentially I'm just going to come around, mix it all up, make sure that I get the edges, and you can smell the garlic, you can smell the richness of the butter, the cream, and the goat cheese. And I'm going to throw a bit of salt in there, of course a bit of pepper, and once again mix it up. And finally I'm going to taste it. Alright, in my opinion it needs a bit more salt, so I'm going to season again. And now you have this nice thick consistency. It's beautiful, smells good. Again, it smells just like Christmas. It reminds me of my childhood. So I'm going to put a cover on that and just let it sit until we're ready. Now, the moment you were waiting for, my beautiful king cold duck breast. We're going to season it, of course. So a bit of pepper. And I want to put a lot of salt onto the duck skin or the duck fat, because that fat, we're going to render it. Now I'm going to use my one hand to flip it over, and I'm going to season the other side. A bit of pepper. And a lot of people will put the duck breast on a hot pan. I encourage you to try it this way. My pan is cold right now. I just slapped the duck breast on top of the cold pan. So I have my cold duck breast on the pan. I have the skin side down, and I'm going to turn it to about a medium high heat. And what that's going to allow it to do is that the fat, you saw the heavy layer that we had, it will render. And what rendering means is that the fat will slowly come out and it will leave a crunchy, crispy duck skin, and that's exactly what we're looking for when we're cooking duck. So again, this will take a bit of time. We're going to jump right into the Brussels sprouts. You can wait a bit on the Brussels sprouts. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'll make them right now. So we're going to dump our oil in to this pan here. And we're going to turn it to a medium heat, and we're going to allow the oil to warm up. Alright, so now the Brussels sprouts. So my oil is hot, and I put all my Brussels sprouts face down. Again, a lot of people get scared of hot oil. It is to be you have to be careful with it because it can splatter, but don't be too scared of it. Some people throw the food into the pan. Just go and lightly drop it in. Don't be scared. When you're scared, you splash the oil up a bit more, and you want to put it down away from you. So just like that, there you go, no problem, no splashing, no nothing, just nice and safe. So these are going to start frying, and now you can hear the crackling of the duck. So as you can see around the duck, there's some fat, and that's what I mean by rendering the fat. So right now the fat is a bit thick, but you're going to see in a few minutes when I turn it around, it'll be nice and gold and crispy. It'll be very appetizing, and that's exactly what we will try to duplicate back at home. So stay tuned for the Brussels sprouts, stay tuned for the duck. Alright, so it's been about, I'd say, 1.5 to 2 minutes. You can see this nice golden texture on our Brussels. So we're going to flip them over. You might want to turn down the heat just a bit, because the oil might start splashing. Just be careful. If the oil does start splashing, just take it off the heat. The worst thing to do is to start panicking, because then you lose control of what's going on. But you just flip it, and when you see it's nice and golden, you have them crispy. That's exactly what we're looking for. And there you go. So I personally like my Brussels sprouts crunchy. I'd say take them off the heat and let them continue to cook in the oil. And if you like them soft, just keep cooking them at a low temperature. They're gonna kind of like poach. Now we're gonna take a look at our duck breast. And you can see the nice, beautiful golden texture that we have. I'm just going to leave it a bit longer because I want some of that fat to render some more. So again, I turned down the heat a bit. We're about at a medium-low temperature. And you can see in the pan all that fat that has rendered out. That's exactly what we're looking for when we're cooking duck. So now that we've had these Brussels sprouts in the oil, you can see that now the other side has crisped up a bit too. I'm going to take my Brussels sprouts and simply put them on a cloth to let the oil soak out. And I'm going to turn the oven off. And I'm going to let it open for a bit, and I'm going to throw the Brussels sprouts in so they stay nice and crispy and warm. Now, you can see a beautiful color. You can't really hear it, but it is crispy and it's nice. I just turned it over. Now that that's done, I'm going to throw in my garlic and my thyme. And what that's going to do is that the duck breast is going to take some of those beautiful flavors and that's going to cook. Now some chefs will use their fingers to kind of feel the firmness of the meat. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's okay. You can simply use a thermometer. So I have my thermometer here. We're going to probe it in a few seconds. But what I like to do with the duck is, you see how it's caramelizing underneath? We're going to leave it a bit more, but I'm also going to caramelize the sides, because you go and get that caramelization, it's just extra flavor all around. So just use your tongs, come and caramelize the outside. Let it cook a bit more. Flip the garlic around, flip the thyme around, let the nice oils from the duck infuse with them. So what's important with meat is that you let your meat rest after you've cooked it. After you take it off, the juices still keep cooking, and the temperature actually goes up a few degrees. So it's very important to remember that when you're cooking the duck. So I'm going to probe my duck for the first time, and I'm currently at exactly 135. That is a perfect temperature in my opinion. That's a medium rare. So I'm going to go and I'm going to take a plate, and I take my duck, and I'm going to let it rest for about 5 to 10 minutes. And that will allow the juices to soak into the fiber that we have in the meat. And if you cut the meat too quick, you lose too much juice. The blood comes pouring out. You really need to let your meat rest, because the juices will get almost absorbed back into the tissue. So do yourself a favor, let it rest 5-10 minutes. It will not affect your duck whatsoever. Alright, so now that the Brussels sprouts are on the Scott towel, we're just going to sprinkle a bit of salt and just move them around, just like that, just for a bit of seasoning. Alright, so we have everything ready. Every component is here. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to take our potatoes and we're going to come and make a nice generous portion, and we're going to hit the middle just like that. If you want to make a canal, go ahead. I'm just kind of making a bed for the later steps. I'm going to come and take my farce and cut the edges off, kind of just squaring it off, and I'm going to cut a nice square piece and put it right there, just like that. You can come and take a few Brussels sprouts and just lay them into the potatoes. Beautiful, crunchy Brussels sprouts. I'm going to take my cranberry sauce and I'm going to just lay a bit like that, and you can push it like that, just like that, nice and smooth, just like that. So nice push, so in case you can't see it, just like that. And finally, I'm gonna go over to my duck. Now my duck has been resting for about, I'd say 5-7 minutes, and I'm just gonna cut the duck, and look at that, beautiful, beautiful color. I like to cut my duck thin. Remember that once you cut the duck, it's gonna start becoming gray on the outside, so make sure that you're ready to serve it right away. Now I take the end pieces off, and I'm just gonna go ahead and fan it out a bit like that, and just put it on top of my potatoes, and there you go. Nice, beautiful presentation, just in time for the holidays, wow your guests, wow your family, wow your loved ones. Just smells like Christmas in here. It's beautiful. Alright, now we're gonna go into plating the soup. So I warmed up my soup. I'm gonna take a ladle and nicely just pour a bit of this creamy, lovely smelling soup into the bowl, and I'm just going to shake it out, make it nice and even. I'm going to take the sour cream, I'm just going to, a few drops here and there, doesn't have to be exact, just a bit of abstract. I'm going to take a few caramelized nuts. Again, this is a very abstract finishing plating, just like that. A few croutons in, just like that. And just to add a bit of color, I'm going to go and add some parsley. So there you go, very simple plating of a celeriac soup. So I hope everyone's enjoyed this beautiful supper as much as I did as a child. I hope that you've also enjoyed it with your loved ones. Go back and create your own version of this dish and share it with your friends and family for the holiday. And best of all, thank you for helping us raise money for the people that need it the most.